Hi, I'm Gabriel Castro from exoticwoodpen.com. Welcome back to my shop. In this video, we're going to be casting the tool handle using Alumilite, and with that, we'll get started. So on the bench, you can see I have my mold. I have my blank already in here. I've got a couple of makeshift bushings, and I've got a couple of screw heads here, just a couple of drywall screws. I know we all got those. And that is just so I can lift that out. Okay, now in the earlier part of the video, you saw that I had holes drilled on each end. That's so it can hold the end of that right there. Okay. So, and that's on, same thing on the opposite end. And besides, this side is also drilled deep enough for the 4 inches to accept the tool end. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put that back in. Oh, before we do that, I ended up using a silicone lubricant to spray the inside of the mold and the bushings. And I thought I grabbed Teflon, but I don't know how the silicone is going to work, but we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Okay, so those fit in there really tight. Now this is just a plywood mold, but I ended up covering the whole thing inside and out with packing tape, so it's really slick, including the top. You can kind of see a little bit of a glare on there. So any of that Alumilite, if it gets on there and bonds, it's going to bond to the tape. Take it apart with screws that are on the side. No big deal. The tape will just peel right off. In theory, it should work fine. So I'm not exactly sure how it'll work when it starts to cure. I don't know how hot it's going to get. So this is the first time I'm really using Alumilite. So I did make one test piece one time with a little piece of carbon fiber coated over a pencil. I weighted it down with a screw, and it seemed to do pretty good. This is the Alumilite Clear Cast. And Amazing Clear Cast is what I'm using. Now this says side A. So I ended up buying these containers, and I wrote A, and I got a lid with A, and the same thing with B for the other side and B on top. That way I don't mix. I'm going to use these to measure how much I need. I need about 28 ounces. It is a 1-to-1 ratio. So let's at about 14 ounces on each one, which is, of course, somewhere between the 12 and the 16. I'll put a line on that, and I'll fill it up to there, so that when I mix it, I'm going to pour the contents of each one into this container, and I got a paint stick so that I can mix that and hit the bottom of the container as well as the sides. So anyway, with that, I'll go ahead and get started on pouring inside here. Now you have to do this by volume, not by weight. That looks good. And make sure you pour all this the contents out from one container to the next. Make sure you scrape the sides out and get out all that as much as possible. And the good thing about this stuff is it's got a long open time. I'm going to actually let this cure overnight. So this is B going into the mixing cup. Now part A was much thicker than part B is. Probably should have bought the larger container. Make sure you're scraping the sides and hitting the bottom. I learned that watching a few YouTube videos. And the first experience I had didn't work out so well because I was using a plastic knife, not a stirring stick, for about the same amount of volume, and it was a terrible mixture. So it never cured. Let me speed up the mixture on the inside. You can see that's really starting to clear to the bottom. It's really transparent. I don't see any trails of any mixture. Okay, so with that, I'm going to do this real slow. See if we can, oops, I'm making a mess already, dang it. Pour this over the whole thing. I want to try and encapsulate it as I go. It looks like I got probably about 2 ounces left in there, so probably didn't need to go quite that much, but I have a feeling when I do the next part, I'll need it. So I'm going to move this to my drill press next. Okay, so here we are at the drill press, and you're probably wondering, why am I at the drill press? Well, as I said in a couple previous videos, I don't have a pressure pot, so I need a shaker of some sort. I was going to mount a sander along the side, but the sander I had was way too big. So the next option, the drill press, my next go-to tool for everything. So in the previous video, I talked about one of the things you're going to need was a nail. Well, that's why I said it's got a little bit of a bend in it, which you can see slightly. Okay, now there's a hole right here, and that's about a ½ an inch deep or so. So we're going to insert the nail, the straight end first. Let's make sure that's tight because that's going to have a little bit of a run time. Now we're going to raise this up into that hole. Now that's right there. So now that is going to be our, like a concrete vibrator or a paint shaker. That's going to raise all these bubbles up. Just the higher the steeper the angle of the bend, the more of a vibration you're going to get. So it's barely a vibration, but it's enough to just give it a gentle shake to lift all those air bubbles out. So I'm going to let that run for a few minutes off camera. Okay, that ran about 5 minutes. And you can kind of see a couple of air bubbles, but not very many along the surface. And I'm expecting a little bit of air bubbles on the ends where the raw wood is after it was sealed, along the edges of the dowels of those bushings. So that's what's causing that, because those aren't sealed with CA glue. So everything else looks good. And then we'll demold that tomorrow. Okay, this is the cast from last night. And as you can see, there's a few air bubbles as expected on the side over there. But I got a little bit more here in the middle than I wanted to see. And another issue I had was, if you look at the clock face, you'll see the yellowing. Well, it looks like that is a bit of a reaction with the nail polish and the Alumilite. So I'm not exactly sure why that happened. And it looks like it tarnished some of the brass gears as well. I've never had that before, but I've only casted before using casting craft polyester resin. So I don't know what that is, never seen it, but it looks like we learned something new. So next time, on the next one I pour, I'm going to use CA glue, which is a typical question I get is, why don't I use CA glue? Well, never needed it. Well, now it looks like I do. So anyway, with that, we'll go ahead and start disassembling this. Oops. Okay, I got it out, and it did not go quietly. I tell you, I had to end up cutting the ends off, and I just took a saw to it and just cut it. So, but you can see this is the dowel section where hanging on the centers right there. So I'm gonna have to re-drill those out. Looks like I also got quite a few air bubbles and a lot of tarnishing going on the inside from the brass. I guess it was a reaction from the nail polish going on against the carbon fiber with the Alumilite. So probably not such a great idea to use Alumilite. Perhaps next time I'll go back to the clear polyester resin. But anyway, looks like we all learned something today. I hope it helps. Hope you like it. Next time will be better. Okay, so here's a close-up. I'm just going to pan from one side to the next.